Yes, Mr. Daniel, it's been a long time. Good afternoon here in Uganda.
Good afternoon. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while, but we thank God that we are finally here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this.
Oh, yeah. If I'm to remind you again, my name is Nasa Kakumba, and I'm happy to, have a discussion with you from the one we had a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
I'm happy
yeah.
that,
I'm looking forward to get into it. And just to refresh your audience's memory, I'm a 48-year-old entrepreneur. I've had businesses. I've written books. I've bought businesses. I've sold businesses. I've been married for 27 years. I've got three wonderful adult children. Um, in the last couple of years, I've read a lot of books, over 250 books. Spent a lot of years applying basically the wrong perspectives to a lot of what I thought was the right perspective at the time. And now that I'm on the back side of it, I can see that knowledge is power, and all that knowledge is in those books that I've started reading. And so now I'm traveling the world talking about those principles, those concepts, trying to bring the knowledge from the books to the people.
thank you so much. I really appreciate the fact that you're reading widely, but also not just reading, you're also writing a bit of books. And this is evidenced in the fact that you've come up with a number of interesting quotes. In fact, I was going through them a couple of days ago, and they're really interesting pieces of work. I have also come up with quotes, my own quotes. They're over 40,
Okay.
and I've compiled a book that is soon going to be out probably. I'll get an opportunity to share it with you probably if I upload it on Amazon or otherwise. There are also very interesting quotes, but getting to these pieces of work that you put together, probably we can, go through them. You see, you've just said that knowledge is power, and true. If people, or if we are armed with enough knowledge, then we stand tall, and we cannot at any point in time be manipulated because we have the knowledge, which turns out to be power. That is something very powerful, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, and the thing about knowledge is it's free. That's what's phenomenal. It's every second you're alive, you're gaining data. Every second, it's just time is a malevolent force that forces more content into your data senses, into your mind, into your hearing, into your eyes, and you have the chance to relocate that data to mean more than it did yesterday, to mean something different going forward. And that knowledge is literally in the books. Most of the books I read were over 100 years old, or at least written in the era of 100 years ago, because that was the last great civilization that came from nothing and built into something, right? Before the politicians, before the corruption, before the fat got to the public, there was a hard core group of people that had to build from nothing. And through those times, they learned through the hard work, through the efforts, through the mistakes, what it takes to build a society, to build a culture that thrives. Now, unfortunately, they didn't see the corruption coming in along with that, and they kind of rose together, unfortunately. But that's the part of the process is you have to deal with those weeds in your garden. You have to be able to function in your own mind while other people are functioning in their minds around you, and not be influenced in a negative way, and step up. Does that make sense?
It does. One of the most powerful books I've read was a small book by John Maxwell, but in it was a quote that I'll never forget. It has transformed my life. He said that regardless of the size of the container, cream remains on top. Regardless of the size of the container, cream remains on top. Meaning that if you get a drop of oil and you put it in a small cup of water, it will remain on top. When you get it and you put it in a drum of water, it remains on top. When you put it in a basin or in a lake or an ocean, it remains on top. So that quote, that was, I think, 12 years ago. It really worked for me, and it has worked for me up to now. To believe in yourself, that look here, I understand, I'm free, I can move forward, I can share views, I can articulate things, not being laid back. So that's the power in books. That's the power in sharing knowledge. And I think it's very important for us to try as much as we can. And I appreciate your initiative to see to it that we try as much as we can to embrace reading, to embrace books, because in them, just like you've said, you've been married for over 27 years. So just writing a book of your experience in 27 years, meaning that the reader is benefiting from an experience of 27 years, and this could be someone who has just entered marriage. So that's really the power in books, Mr. Daniel.
Well, I forgot to congratulate you on your book. That's awesome. How did you come up with the idea to put a book of quotes together?
I've been looking at a number of scenarios around me and globally. I've been reading and trying to observe. And over a period of time, because I started, writing a couple of years ago, maybe around 10 or so years ago. But being in the world that we are, we are in the information age, you start to observe a number of things, a number of patterns, and you start to see to it that somehow there are certain things that are common, and when you bring them out better, people can get to appreciate them. But again, the people that we live with, sometimes you could be having a discussion with someone, just like we're having now, and you make a statement. When I make a statement and you think it is a normal statement, but after some time, you realize that the person has understood it and reminds you. One of the quotes I came up with is, those who do not want to think will work for those who are thinking. I said it to my wife one morning. I told her, those who do not want to think will always work for those who are thinking. So it was plain. When she came back in the evening, she told me, you remember the statement you said? It kept bothering her. So some of the quotes I'm finally, I'm compiling into books were just statements I made, and people reminded me after time. But you know what? There's a statement you made, and so I decided to sit with, okay, maybe I was looking at them as simple statements, but people have really seen them as pieces of wisdom and knowledge that can be amplified and probably, explained to the benefit of many other people who may come across them.
Yeah,
So
well, that's awesome. Congratulations on your success. I think it's going to be huge. And, what a blessing it's going to be to those people that read it and get wisdom in bite-sized pieces. So they don't have to read a 4 or 6 hour long book. They can literally just read a page and get so much wisdom. So good job. Way to go.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel, we are in the information age. We are in an information age. When we read, when we're in primary school, we were told, for instance, here in Uganda, about the richest companies that, were in the world a couple of years ago. They were basically farmers. The richest people were farmers. There came a time when the richest people in the world were, industrialists, the Ford and all those people, the Toyota, they were the richest people. Now, we are at a time when the richest people in the world are basically selling information or having interfaces for information. People who are, for instance, when you look at Facebook, Twitter, when you look at platforms like Google, these are people who are really in the information kind of trade. Now, meaning that it would be really laying us back. It would lay a number of people back if we do not, tap into this age where the richest people in the world are selling information, for lack of a better word. The richest people in the world now are not into farming, though it's okay for people to do farming. They're not industrialists per se, but they're basically either selling information or interfaces for information, like Bill Gates, Microsoft, like, these young billionaires coming up, of Facebook, of Twitter, Elon Musk, and that. Now, that means that if that is the source of wealth, it is very, very important for us to see to it that we make a substantive, look, a critical look onto what information can do to the globe, but also in making sure that our lives are transformed using that information. Mr. Daniel?
So, Nasa, how old are you, sir? How many years are you? How old are you?
I'm 34 years.
34 years. Okay. So you have 34 years of experience being NASA. No one else has that experience. That's very, very unique and very, very valuable. There's no one else that could experience what you've experienced over the last 34 years and come out the way that you came out. There are other
Mm.
people that would have taken different roads. They would have not overcome what you overcame. They would have been put back whenever someone pushed them down, and they would have stayed there. So congratulations on being you. Now, do you understand that it would take me, if I started today, it would take me 34 years just to hear the first 34 years of your life. I don't have that kind of time. You don't have that kind of time, so that we can get to know each other. But if you'll take, a few weeks of your time and collapse your 34 years down into the experience of about 4 hours for me to read in a book, I just added 34 years of experience to my life. I just broadened my horizons. I've added to my expectations of what life is, what life can be. And all I did was literally listen to what you had to say about your experience of being you. And it doesn't matter what knowledge else is being out there. It doesn't matter who else is doing what. The only thing I can control is where I put my attention, where I put my awareness. Because there's all kinds of things going around in the world that we're only aware of what we're aware of. We can only see what's in front of us. We can't see through walls. We can't see around corners. Well, we can't think outside of what we think about. It's like the hardest thing in the world is to come up with an idea where you don't have an idea yet. It's like you can't force that to happen. It has to happen naturally. Well, other things happen naturally too, which is when you start thinking higher of yourself, when you start acting higher as a person and not worrying so much about what other people are doing, but worried about what you're doing with your time, because this is your life. This is your part in history. This is your active part of history to get started. And so by reading books, by writing books, by exchanging knowledge freely and accepting whatever it is you say is your experience of you, I don't need to resist that. I need to judge that. I need to add so that I can think bigger and broader. And maybe your life helps me overcome some issues in my life that I never would have thought of otherwise. Did I lose you completely? My screen went black.
Now.
Oh, okay. There you go. How much of that did you miss?
Maybe like a minute. Like a minute.
Okay. What part did you miss? Where did you stop?
The experience of over 34 years being compressed into a 4-hour book.
Yeah. So if you compress your 34 years into 4 hours, I've added your years to my life. So if I read 200 books and they're all written by 70-year-old men or women, that have this life experience, and they tell me up front that these books are going to be about self-development, about growth, about life experience, about eternal principles that can't be changed. And if I spend, 250 times 4, so 1,000 hours reading those books with specifically from those age groups, from those principles, I just learned about 14,000 years of self-development by attaining 250 books worth of knowledge. And it cost me virtually nothing. I can do that from freelibrary.org. I think it's library.org is a free website that people can go on and download books, read books. There's all kinds of free things on YouTube. There's no reason someone has to pay to get a book, to get a piece of knowledge. What they have to do is then they have to sit down and read the book, which obviously is the most challenging part. But if you think about that, you're going to spend 4 hours to gain 70 years of knowledge, specific knowledge that is designed and filtered to help you, then can't you commit to 4 hours of focus, 4 hours of attention to get that knowledge inside of you? Now, just because you read a book doesn't mean you have the knowledge inside of you. You have to go through and try to apply those principles to your real life. And guess what? You're going to fail because you're doing everything the first time out of ignorance. You don't know what works and what doesn't work. You have an idea, a concept. Well, that's not your identity. That's not who you are. If you have an idea and you go to implement that as a concept, but it fails, that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that now you have more data than you had when you first had that idea, that first concept. And now you've proven that first concept doesn't work. So, a baby will fall down 3,000 times before it learns to walk. So if you're not skilled in implementing new processes and new concepts, then give it some more time. Understand that it might take 3,000 tries in order to get that concept down so that it fits right in your life. It fits right in reality. It fits right in the concept of who you think you are. And so that's really what I talk about whenever I start pushing people into reading books. It is, how big do you want to be? How many years of existence do you want behind you when you're living forward? Well, I want 14,000 years of knowledge and understanding and experience behind me in my rearview mirror, so that going forward, I can look forward and not be fearful of anything that happens. I've already read the book. If there's a world war breaks out, guess what? I've read the book. I know how it goes. If there's a spiritual war breaks out, guess what? I've read the books. I know how it goes, because everything that's happened and will happen has already happened once, or maybe many times. It just happened in different forms, in different ways. And if you think broad enough and read enough books to get enough context, you can start extrapolating those greater and bigger and broader themes that play out through history, and find peace in the inefficiencies of all these, live in chaos. Because that's where most people live, is they just live second to second, not really considering what's behind them, but only considering what's in front of them, and not realizing that anything you consider that's in front of you is a misconception. It has to be, because you've never experienced it before. This moment's never happened to you. So you have to be able to step into every moment knowing you're in complete ignorance of this second, of this moment. You don't know what the repercussions are going to be. And if you can step into it with as much knowledge and as much wisdom as possible, because you've read 14,000 years worth of knowledge, then going forward, it's like there's no more fear, there's no more anxiety. So you can step forward into anything knowing that you're confident in who you are, you're confident in what's capable of being done.
Well, that's very interesting, Daniel. You see, when you bring in that perspective, that narrative of the experience in terms of years, someone taking you as an example, 27 years of being a married man, and of course, a lot has happened. Certainly, a lot has happened. And when you compress that into a 4 or 5 hour book, that kind of narrative should be sinking much into the mind of any person who would be having a poor reading culture. What do you think?
I can further reduce 27 years of marriage into a couple minutes, if you don't mind me sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what they don't tell you about marriage is that it's not what you think it is. It's not even close. Like, you are two completely separate individuals. You're living in completely different worlds. You have different contexts. You have different environments, different everything. And you've agreed to come forward and live your life side by side. I know they say together, but let's face it, there's no way to actually live together. I've been married for 27 years. I don't know my wife's most inner thoughts. She doesn't know mine. She never will. I will never share them with anyone. They're for me and me alone, me and God. I'll get exposed to those. So any words that I use to speak to her, I'm actually just speaking to myself, hoping that she understands what I'm saying. But it doesn't play out that way. It plays like I'm actually communicating and saying things, right? And so whenever she mishears, misapplies, whatever from my intention, well, guess what? That's because I spoke my language to me. She heard foreign stuff and translated that into her language and made it mean whatever she made it mean. Well, I have to take responsibility for that. I have to understand that my language is not her language, that the way I would speak to me is not the way I would speak to her. Not if I want to have a good marriage, not if I want to have a happy wife and be happy myself. So what they don't tell you is that once you agree to come forward and live life together, there's two key components that everyone must know. And that is, a woman has one need above all else. And it's every woman across the entire planet in all of history. They have one mega need, and that's called security. That is driven from them from the very moment they're born. They want to be secure in their life and who they are. They want to be provided for. They want to make sure that they can rely on the information they're given. And they want to be secure in who they are. Now, that does not mean that they want a husband that makes a lot of money. That does not mean they want a husband that talks to them in a certain way or anything like that. It just means they need the internal feeling of, I'm secure. And when they're married to a man, a lot of times they think that security comes from the man, but it doesn't. It comes from within their own selves. How do they get that security within themselves? They have a man that also has one mega need. That mega need for a man is honor. Above all else, a man seeks, needs, and desires, requires honor. The disconnect, the problem is most men think they get that honor from their wives, and they don't. They get it from within themselves. So when a man is having immoral thoughts, when a man is living a life in his mind that is different than the life that he projects to the world, and he's out of congruence within his own self, there's no honor there. There's no integrity there. He is putting on for the masses. He's putting on for other people. So there's no honor there in him. There can't be. There has to be truth. There has to be light inside of your own thoughts about yourself and about your life. And within that is where you find your honor. And when your wife sees that you're honorable in your thoughts, she feels secure.
Daniel, what you just said reminds me of one of the quotes I came up with. It says that never be deceived. People do not follow you, but they instead follow themselves through you.
That's exactly right.
They follow themselves through you. So, I mean, it brings out that perspective that literally this lady or this man wants to see himself through the other sex. Thank you, Daniel. Now, getting to these pieces of knowledge that you have come up with, they're interesting, and I would want to pick your inner thought on a number of them. You see, explaining them a little, because really they are brilliant pieces of work. Number one says that if you are to eliminate money in all its various forms and concepts, what do you get in exchange for your time? If you are to eliminate money in all its various forms and concepts, what do you get in exchange for your time? What were you trying to bring out here, Daniel?
Well, most people think that they have bills to pay, so they want to go get a job so they can pay those bills and have the luxuries and conveniences that most people experience in the world, right? And so they want to go sell their time to perform a certain task so that they can provide a certain level of living. Well, that's surface level basic logic. What's a deeper layer than that? Well, I would want to have a job. If I had a job, I would want to have a job that made me feel good about myself. So not only do I work for a paycheck, I work for honor, integrity for myself. I work to provide. I work for that feeling of productivity. But beyond that, I want to work a job that I can see a future in, because I've got more years of my life ahead of me, and I like to grow, as those years progress. So I like to see something that's going to benefit me in my skills and in my understandings of myself. Maybe I've learned how to lead people. I'm not just working at a low paying labor job. I'm learning how to be led. I'm learning how to follow directions. I'm learning how systems work. I'm learning how to work with other people. So if you take the money away from it, really what you're doing is you're practicing being you in the future when you're at work. And you're doing that under the instruction and guidance of someone else that's already figured it all out. So the reason that you would have a job is to go practice being a better version of yourself, so that in the future, whenever it's your company, whenever it's you running the team, whenever it's your leads that are doing things, it's not just money that you made a few $1,000s working a couple of years at a job. It's no. Those first 2 years were instrumental. That's where I learned customer service. That's where I learned that, the milk always gets delivered. There's no reason not to do the job. It's always finished with excellence. It's always finished so that whenever I remember back doing this, I want to have a high opinion of myself, remembering myself do it. And so that's what that's about. It's the quote or the question was, it was like, if you take away all the money, like the reason you got to the job, because you got to the job for the money. But you take that away and you just think about your life and not what you can buy, not where you're going to be, not who you are. It's just literally in the next 20 years, How much growth do you want to experience? And wouldn't you love to get paid to experience that growth? Well, guess what? That's what a job is. Someone else has a need, and they're going to pay you to learn to fill it. They're going to train you, and then they're going to let you go when you're finished and do that for yourself or do it for someone else for more money. So if that's your mentality when you go to work every day, is, hey, I'm practicing being a better me for myself tomorrow. Then guess what? Work levels come up. Your efficiencies come up. You learn more. You're better at your job. Your employer does better. Everyone wants to get theirs, get theirs, get theirs. That's not how it works. You have to plant the seed. You have to help other people succeed first. You have to practice on their dime at their risk. You have to give your all for them and watch their mistakes, learn from them, and then step into your own thing. And so that's what I was going for. Was those are for people that have jobs or people that think they want jobs, and to get deeper and understand that that's not why you're working. You're not working for the money. You're working for the knowledge and the experience and the relationship development.
That's beautiful. In fact, in other words, you're telling us to treat money as a byproduct.
Right.
Yeah. Treat
a necessary byproduct.
The second one says, it all begins and ends in your mind. What you give power to has power over you. It all begins and ends in your mind. What you give power to has power over you.
I specifically wrote that for a specific person because they were concerned about what somebody else was doing in their life. Literally had no impact on this other person. It was really just an observation between these two gentlemen. And it was very disconcerting for the gentleman who was talking to me. And he spent weeks, maybe even months, in angst and anxiety and fear and all this stuff on something that he did not require his effort, did not require his energy. And he gave away all the potential of that time that he had to have good thoughts, to have potentially positive and high paying and wonderful thoughts that build relationships, build networks, build lives. He could have spent all those weeks thinking about those things and got dozens of hours, maybe even hundreds of hours into this whole new line of positive thinking. But instead he held tight into this thing that this other guy was doing was wrong. And it didn't matter. Maybe he was wrong, maybe he was right. Who cares? It's his life. He's going to do what he's going to do and think what he's going to think and be who he's going to be. It doesn't matter. It's not worth sacrificing my power to try to stop someone else doing anything they're doing. It's like it's a distraction. And the distraction literally takes away the traction that I've gained when I put in all the hours of reading, all the hours of working. That's traction. And to get sidetracked by other people would be a distraction, which means I'd literally be losing ground headed back down the hill. And that's not something I advocate.
That's beautiful. There is one that says, if you don't have what you want, if you don't have what you want to have, then you are not who you want to be. If you don't have what you want to have, then you are who you are not to be.
Yes, if you want something that you don't have, then you're not being who it is you want to be. There's some block there. There's some fear. There's some doubt. There's some misunderstanding, misconception of yourself or what it is you're after. But if you're living a life one way, but wanting it to be a different way, you're not living the life you want to live. You're being disingenuous to yourself and to those people that are serving you. It's like they're serving you in the life that you portray that you're living. So if you're desiring to live a different life, you're being inefficient in what they could offer you and how they would serve you. And oftentimes that's a mental thing. We project it to be any change is a bad change whenever other people don't share the vision, right? They don't have the same conception. And so if you just be you all the time, authentically you, be happy with what's going on in the world, be happy with your view of it. If you don't like your view of it, change your view. You can't change the world, but you can change your view of it. You can change what you give your attention to. And if you do that, then you will be happy, and the people around you will see that you're being happy, and they will serve you and be glad to do so. because everyone loves to serve a happy person and no one loves to serve someone that's not happy. But when you're living separate lives, being different people in different situations, and you're not being authentic to yourself, then it's tough to find honor in that. And it's tough for a man to feel good about himself and live a good life and choose the higher thing for himself in those moments.
Wow. That's beautiful. You know, the Bible says, my people perish due to lack of knowledge. And this clearly comes out that if we do not, you know, make an effort to look for the knowledge, especially when we are blessed with vessels like yourself, then we'll have nothing to blame God for. Another one says, you do not have to figure out how to win life, just win this instant win, the moment. You do not have to figure out how to win life. Just win this instant. Just win this instant. Win the moment.
Win the moment. How many times have you in your life been in a situation where maybe things are out of hand? You're feeling overwhelmed. It's like maybe you don't know what to do, or maybe you want to do something, but you can't, and it's frustrating for you. In those moments, those are just negativity, right? They're not comfortable. And you can win that moment. And you can win that moment by setting a bar that lets you win. I have a bar that's very, very low. I can win every moment of my life. All I have to do is sit up straight and smile. And that lets me win the moment. I feel good about myself whenever I was feeling depressed or anxious or mad or angry. And I sat up straight and I smile. And I said, you know what? I'm still in control of myself. I just won this moment. I'm not subject to my feelings. I'm not subject to that voice in my head. I'm certainly not subject to the circumstances that are outside of myself. I can win this moment. So I sit up straight and I smile. And that just resets everything in my mind. It's like, oh, that's right. I'm in control and I can live this life my way.
That's a very good strategy. Deploying a smile at a point in time when you feel perplexed, distressed, and you're like, okay, I'm still in charge. You know, we become the worst enemies of ourselves if we fail to control what is going around ourselves. The other one is you are best and you are the best and highest version of yourself. Don't believe me, show me another. What's your life now? And there is no longer a reason to question or doubt yourself. You are the best and highest version of yourself. Don't believe me, show me another. What's your life now? And there is no longer a reason to question or doubt yourself.
So Nasa, if you told me what your life was, would you be convinced that you're telling me the truth?
Percentages at a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, you
at a certain degree.
You see yourself the way you see yourself, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, when you talk to yourself, you don't lie to yourself about you. You're pretty forthright, right?
Certainly.
I'm gonna reread that quote. I've just slipped my mind for a second. I've got it right here. You're the best and highest version of yourself. Don't believe me, show me another. So what I'm saying is, Nasa, when you tell me that you're not the highest version of yourself, I would like you to show me your twin that is a better version of you. He doesn't exist. You exist, so you are the best version of yourself. I've been married one time. I've had one wife. Guess what? She's my favorite wife I've ever had. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say, but you have to set the bar very low to get that positive feeling, to set, remove all those blocks from everything in your life. Let yourself win. And the fact is, I've had one wife and she is my favorite wife I've ever had. So you are you because you exist. Because you exist, you are the highest possible version of yourself. Guess what? That means no other versions can come up behind you and overtake you. There's nothing to fear. That means there's 100 million infinite number of versions behind you that would kill to be as good as you are. That's what that means. I mean, set yourself up to be the best. Think of yourself as the best. That way, whenever you take an action, you're taking the best action because that's what you do. That's who you are. And then what's your life now? So that's what I'm saying. If you told me what your life was, you would not doubt that. So why would you doubt it whenever you say you want to be something more? Just go ahead and say, I am something more in the future. It's just going to take a number of moments for me to see that. You know, it's kind of like being pregnant. The moment you get an idea, you are pregnant with that idea. And the more energy and time you give that, boom, here comes the baby. Here it comes. And it will come. It's an immaculate conception. You got that idea through God. It came into your brain. Boom, there it is. It's asleep in your brain until you give it activity, until you give it energy, until you give it enough time to manifest, to show up in your life. That's how that works.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. That's a good one. This one says, remember, airplanes take off against the wind, not with it. It's a beautiful one. Remember, airplanes take off against the wind, not with it. You got this?
So many people think resistance should be ran away from, that confrontation should never be had. And that's just not the case. It's like we have different goals, we have different communication skills, we have different everything. We are different people. There's going to be friction. You can't avoid the friction. But guess what? In the friction is where you get heat. That's where you get electricity. That's where you get things done, is by resisting what is there and establishing what it is you're creating. You know, I have found it's best to create something that flows with the current. You know, so if you can get on the right side of a movement, if you can get in front of it and lead where they're going anyway, right? So if you're going to a positive place in your future, wouldn't you lead yourself by being positive now and get in front of yourself so you can lead where you're headed? I mean, that's how I think about when I consider what it is that I'm doing with my time. I'm always building something that will compound tomorrow and make today such a significant part of my tomorrow. Because the experts say we have 90,000 thoughts a day, and 85,000 of those thoughts are the same thought that we had yesterday. So we have to constantly be increasing those thoughts that we didn't have yesterday, or at least increasing our awareness of the ones that we had. And that's easy to do because all you have to do is, I don't know about you, Nasa, but most of my day is spent asking myself questions. It's like, why did they do that? Why did that happen that way? I thought that was going to happen differently. Why did it happen that way? I ask myself questions like that all the time. Now, maybe that's just me. I don't know. But what I've discovered is the answers to the questions don't really matter. What matters is the questions themselves. And anytime I'm questioning anything outside of myself, I know I'm asking the wrong question. It's not, hey, I'm in an argument with my buddy. Why is he wrong? It's, hey, I'm in an argument with my buddy. Why am I eliciting this emotional response from myself? Putting no energy toward blaming my buddy for the conflict. 100%. The conflict was with me. Why? What is it that I'm resisting within myself that makes me say that what he's saying can't be okay? And that's always going to be an insecurity, always. It's like the only reason to resist anything is because you're not secure. You're not confident that you can handle what's about to happen because you have an expectation. And if that expectation isn't met, you're not confident that you can step up and handle the unexpected in that moment. And that leads to an insecurity. But if you have honorable thoughts and you're prepared, you're just like David. You have your 5 stones. You're ready. You've got the sling. You've got the skills. It's like, show me the giant. Another day, let's go have lunch. You know, it's not that big a deal because you have the honor and integrity, and you're always going to be acting to those core values.
Wow. Wow. That's that's beautiful. There is a saying in my mother tongue, for the benefit of the audience that will watch this. Probably some of them could be conversant with that tongue. It says, "Ata naita ita yatenda nyina okufumba," but in English it means that he who has not visited a number of restaurants or hotels would always think that their mother is the best cook. But when yes, but when you get an opportunity to visit a number of restaurants and hotels, that's when you realize that there is a better cook and a better approach to life than the things that you've been seeing in your home. So that's what
Right.
and that's what I'm experiencing today. And thank you for that. There's another one that says that be careful or at least aware of what you believe, because you will cease supporting evidence of it everywhere. Be careful or at least aware of what you believe, because you will see supporting evidence of it everywhere.
Have you ever felt bad about yourself?
A number of times.
Did you have evidence to support that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That evidence is there all the time. There's always evidence to make you feel bad. You don't have to pay attention to that, because guess what? There's always a flip side. There's always a positive side. There's always a thought that's going to make you feel good about yourself. Always. So
Mhm.
choose that thought. Live in that higher positive thinking about yourself. That's why Christ is so important. It's because we're born into our environment, whatever it is. It's like, I can't control where I'm born. You can't control where you're born. It's like, I don't get to pick anything about my life. I'm just introduced. And then I'm influenced in my personal reality to react to what I see. And that becomes my personality. And over time, I spend time acting and behaving in that personality. And I think that that becomes my identity. It's not. It's just where I'm comfortable experiencing the world. I feel like I control the way that I'm going to interpret things that happen to me. But if I recognize that, because what happens is we live in that world, we live in that identity of me against the world. And then the world smashes us to pieces and destroys our hopes, destroys our dreams. It doesn't work the way we think it works. It crushes us. Some people come to Christ at that moment. Most people don't. Most people pick up, and guess what? They rebuild. A lot of people don't, but some people, they rebuild and they get going again. And like, now I made it. No one's ever going to take this from me again. It's me. I made it. I overcame. I'm strong. And guess what? The world shows up and smacks them again. Takes everything, wipes them out, takes their core from them. That's when they come to Jesus and say, Lord, help me. I don't understand you. You're unbelievable to me because I don't know you. But there's got to be a better way to do this life than just me against the world, because it's not working very well. So when you go, and what you're doing basically is you're saying, I can't do it by myself. And so you surrender to a concept bigger than yourself. And that first time, the very first time that happens, guess what? Nothing changes. Nothing. It's like having a gallon of tea and putting 1 tablespoon of water into it. It's not going to change the color, except that it does. An infantile, small little bit, mathematically, it changes the color of the tea when you put 1 tablespoon of water into a gallon of tea. It does matter. It does make a difference. And when you surrender that control of the world as you see it to a higher power, to a bigger concept than yourself, you start saying, okay, now you have some hope. That's what Christ is, the hope of glory in Christ Jesus, right? So now you have hope. You rebuild. And now you have the Bible, and the Bible's full of wisdom principles. So you stop doing stupid stuff that you thought was smart, because you can see there's repercussions down the road, and it makes a much bigger splash than you thought it was when you thought you were getting by cutting some corners, or by doing people dirty, or doing whatever it is you do, right? So now you have to be introduced to Christ on a whole new level, because you understand that all that stuff you were doing, people got hurt. That was because of you. That's because of me. I did stuff that was in my own best interest and didn't really pay attention to all the stuff that was going on behind me. And in the other side of the equations, people got hurt. And that's when I first discovered Christ. It was in the hearts and souls of all those people that were damaged by me. Well, that was pretty tough for me to take. And I had to surrender, I had to sacrifice my past. that said, there's nothing, I'm not worthy of living forward because of the damage I've done in my past. I demand that the blood of Christ cover my sins for their sake. I demand, because that's the only way it can work. I can't live going forward knowing what I've done to people, even though in the moment I didn't realize it, I didn't recognize it. I would never condemn myself by doing those things intentionally, not knowing what it costs. But you come to Christ and you surrender that. No, I'm sorry, you sacrifice that. It's gone, it's dead, it's done, it's burned on the altar. You move forward with your eyes full. The harvest is ripe, but time is now, always. Like you can always start over again in Christ, saying, okay, from here forward, now I have more evidence that I'm not perfect, more evidence that I need to surrender what I think is control of myself to a higher calling, to a higher concept of myself. So when I'm thinking these thoughts that are negative about other people, when I'm thinking these thoughts that are negative towards me, I need to understand that those are going to compound, those are going to magnify, and I'm going to live that life of condemnation. I'm going to live that life of whatever it is I'm thinking about. So I want to think higher of people. I want to think about helping people. I want to think about helping myself and being and making those better choices. And that all starts with Christ. It's only possible through Christ. And so you have to surrender your future being, whatever it's going to be, knowing that it's not based on your past, because your past is sacrificed.
Wow, that's beautiful. You see, bringing Christ into this perspective, I'm reminded of the fact, you see, I come from a Muslim background. And at a point in time when I confessed Christ, it was a little not easy, given the background. But I always tell whoever I interact with in this kind of sphere that one of the best decisions I've ever made in life was the higher power of of accepting Christ as Lord and Savior. That is one of the best decisions I've ever had in life. And I normally tell Christians that the things that are shared, of course, in church with people like yourself, the knowledge that has, that is constantly being shared. If it was in the other side of the the divide, those people would be something else. But we have an opportunity to continuously have this knowledge shared, and and somehow some of us or some people take it up, but others for some reason may not take it up, but probably maybe with the time. But also it brings in another perspective of a sower. Some seeds fell on the rock, others fell in the thorns, others fell on the fertile ground. It's my prayer that whoever will come up will come across this discussion will be a seed that that falls on a fertile ground. There's this other one, it says, be careful, or at least, no, there's this one. How much would Tiger's 2000 season, how much would Tiger's 2000 season and him in 2024 money? I believe you're meaning Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods, the golfer, yes. So in 2000,
Okay.
he had this epic year where he made $10 million. First time ever in history a golfer does that. And just 23 years later, that $10 million season today, because the prizes have gone up so much in the last 20 years because of Tiger, his 10 million would be worth about $92 million. So that means that in the last 20 years, in the golf world, that's the inflation rate of what it takes for a professional to go out there and win and compete. And it's a whole new world now. And it's just 20 years later. That's what's so fascinating, is we've come that far that fast.
Wow.
I mean, think about, if you compare what a golfer, and I don't know the numbers, but if you think what a golfer in 1960 made professionally versus what he made in 1980, I don't think it's going to be a 900x like it is with Tigers. It might be 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I would imagine. Yeah. And it's just very telling about the state of the economy, the state of inflation, and where we're going as a society if we continue on these paths.
It gives us a bit of a tip on how to even invest, because surely Victor did 10 million US dollars in 2000, and now it is approximately 92 million US dollars. That speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's this one. Frustrated? While you are resisting the events that have already taken place, or resisting the events that have not taken place, life is happening. Life is happening. You are just spending yours in resistance, which is frustration. If the event has already occurred, it's not event you are fighting, it's yourself. If you're fighting yourself, but think you are fighting an event, then frustration is the result. Want to end frustration.
So this post was actually written to kind of funnel people into my subscriber group. I have on Facebook, on my subscriber page, you go to my profile and hit subscribe, and it'll put you in a group. And it's $10, it's $9.99 a month. And I just engage one-on-one with the people that I coach through their life. And there's all kinds of people in there, successful people that are just getting started, young people, old people, of all kinds. So that's why I wrote that. And I just wanted to demonstrate that a lot of people live their lives either in anxiety or depression or both. But the fact is that if you're living in anxiety, there's only one thing that is, period. It's the laziness of your imagination, period. You cannot be anxious with an active imagination. You have to control it, though, because if you let it go on its own, it's only going to go so far and then stop. And that's going to be at the point of most adrenaline, the point of most frustration, the point of most emotion. And your imagination is going to stop right there because that's the ride you're on. You're letting it take you for a ride. But if you go past that, the worst possible scenario, go past that and imagine 2 years later, 20 years later, the rest of your life, and put it into perspective. Imagine what it is you're doing in a much, much greater perspective. And guess what? There's no reason to be anxious because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And then you're going to live another 40 years. And it's not going to be the end of the world like you think it is on this side of that thing. Now, if you're living in depression, that means you're living in a past that already happened. You can't change it. There's no reason to be depressed. Whatever happened, happened, and it's okay. People live, people die, people have existences, people don't have existences. I mean, it's just time goes. It's like a boiling pot. Things happen. Each of us are given a life. I think that's the active part of history. We're only allowed to actively participate in the story of history while we're alive. So each moment is precious, and we need to make all of history that we can because that compounds too. It adds to what other people's experience. And so if you're constantly adding to that with intention, you become a much more fulfilled person because you're a bigger part of history. You're actually contributing to what you think is a better part of history, at least, and that makes you feel good, right? Sorry, I've talked myself in a circle. Help me get back on track. Where was I at?
Daniel, bringing this in perspective, you see, a number of people, I can say a number of us, have somehow been held up in the past. The past occurrences, the mistakes that probably we made, the deals that didn't work out, the people that somehow didn't treat us right, are things that continuously haunt us. Find someone telling you, I have an uncle, probably will never come across this because if he does, I will be attacked. But there was a bank in Uganda called Greenland Bank. It was closed a couple of years ago. Maybe I was still very, very little. But after maybe 30 years or so, when you meet this guy who is now in his late 50s, he tells you that had it not been Greenland Bank that was closed during that time, maybe he would be a better person. But that is over 30 years ago when the bank was closed. And still tells you that the problems that he's facing now, failing to educate his children, things like that, is because of Greenland Bank that was closed probably with a bit of his money 30 years ago. You see, if you could give us a bit of tips, this thing of forgetting the past and say, look here, the past happened, I need to move on, is something that challenges a number of us.
Well, I always come back to everything we experience we experience in ignorance,
Mm.
period. It's like you've never had this moment before. You don't know what I'm going to say before I speak. You have to wait until I speak to know what I'm going to say. Any emotion or any feeling that you have about what I say, think of it like a candy wrapper. You're literally wrapping that emotion around that thought, and you're storing it in your brain. And anytime you pull that out, you're going to taste that flavor of that emotion in that candy wrapper around whatever it is you're thinking about, whatever it is you're eating, right? So it's very important that you think about whenever you're experiencing something that you do not wish to experience, when you're going through a hard time, or you've gone through a hard time in the past, you have to understand that this is the worst it's ever going to be. This is your ignorant phase. You don't know what to expect. So your mind's going crazy with all the scenarios. You're supposed to enjoy that. It's like a roller coaster ride. You pay money to go on that ride to get all that adrenaline flushed into you, because only one thing can happen. All those other bad things, they can't happen. But you spend time thinking about them and you get the adrenaline rush from it because it's a distraction. It's something that helps you face the time that you have to wait until that thing happens, right? So if you know that what you experience is going to be experienced in ignorance, when you come back to it later, you can reframe it. You say, oh, I experienced it that way because I didn't have the context that I now have. And now you said earlier, hindsight's 2020. Well, it's not really 2020. It just gives you other paths that are different than the one that you took. It doesn't tell you all the different assumptions that have to be made for that to say that's better.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you have to be open to saying that the path that you took is the only possible path, because you don't know what else would have happened. And so there's this disconnect, because when you say any time that you travel forward in time and you look backwards, you're going to say, oh, well, now I have more context. I would have done something different. Or even worse, you don't have more context and you think that you were right when you made that decision. So you go forward with the assumption that that was the right decision. You just haven't gained the right context to show you that it's not right yet. So if you can think that way about what's happened in the past, it's like, yeah, you expected something to happen and the opposite happened. And that gap is what we call trauma. When we expect one thing to happen, we get another, and we can't correlate the two. We call that trauma. But all we have to do is lay down our expectation and accept what is, and there's no more trauma. But you have to deal with it from that perspective.
You're reminding me of a common phrase these days. They say, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. The
So be
last
happy
one
about it. They should add something to that phrase. It is what it is, so be happy about it.
yeah. There's this one, it's a phrase. It's a bit of long. It says, the thing that you have seen as a problem, the thing that you've seen as a problem, you know that thing that has you procrastinating or losing sleep, that thing that you don't have figured out or even how to figure it, the thing, that thing.
No, so let me read it for you. It's tough to read. I speak in a very weird vernacular. Let me read that for you.
Please.
That thing that you've seen as a problem, you know, that thing that has you procrastinating, losing sleep, that thing you don't have figured out yet, or even how to figure it, that thing, you know, that thing, it's a gift. Looking at the dark side of the moon only, you'd never know that it's our nightlight. What aspects of you have to accept a change in perspective so that this problem becomes a moment of impact in your life by changing a career or a relationship? By changing the way you see the world, it changes. Now that's a lot. Okay, that is a lot. Very hard to read. It makes sense to me, and I hope it makes sense to other people. But I can hear you reading it and like, man, that's pretty challenging. So hopefully the way I read it, it makes sense. So what I'm saying there is that oftentimes in life, whatever we're doing, we'll come up against what seems to be an immovable object as something that we can't overcome, a limiting factor, right? And there is no such thing as a limiting factor. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Every setback is a setup. Time continues forward. There's always hope. There's always glory on the other side of battle. There's always lessons to be learned. It's never the end of the world, right? And sorry, I'm going to refresh my thinking here. So if you can see the obstacle as the opportunity, it's not the problem. It changes because you're no longer trying to cope. You're no longer trying to deal with or adjust or adapt. You're building. I mean, you already see that as your launching pad. So you're not looking up at a mountain saying, how are we going to climb this? You look at that mountain, you say, oh, I can't wait to get up there and launch my attack from on high ground. And that's how you have to look at everything in life, is that you are moving towards that with hope, because there's glory on the other side of it. There's glory there for you. And in that moment, if you're really good, you can understand that there's glory in that moment. And if you can live in that moment of glory, then life, there's no more struggle. It's literally joy and peace, nothing but love all the time with all kinds of people. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. As we close, there is a saying in my mother tongue saying that knowledge is like fire. When the fire gets done, you go to a neighbor and pick more fire. It's a traditional saying. We grew up in villages whereby we're using firewood. So when you light that fire, you cover a bit of ash on it. So when you need to use it again, you put some pieces of firewood and you light it again. So the traditional saying that knowledge is like fire. When you do not have fire completely, you can go to a neighbor and pick some fire and also light up your fireplace. And this is what I've seen today. It's really been good having such kind of an informative discussion with you. And I believe whoever will come across this will attest to what I'm just saying now. I pray you make some concluding remarks, Daniel.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. It's such a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you again.
Thank you. Thank you. And may God literally bless you.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.